All right, guys, so check this out. Have you ever heard of Goldbelly? Okay, so it's this amazing site where you can order the most iconic, famous foods from restaurants all across the country, and they will ship it straight to your door. That's right, these guys will ship you Philly cheesesteaks from Jim's or Pat's in Philly, buffalo wings from the Anchor Bar in Buffalo, and even Kansas City's most legendary barbecue. So, if you're looking to host an epic Super Bowl party, go to goldbelly.com and get free shipping and 20% off your first order with promo code GAMEDAY.
Hey listeners, this is Peter and welcome back to the History Shorts, your daily, short-format, history-themed variety show and weekly conversation series with the leading voices in history today. Today's conversation is brought to you by thecollector.com, the ultimate online destination for anyone passionate about art, history, and culture. Beautifully curated, easy to read, and perfect for history nerds who want reliable, inspiring content without the fluff. Thecollector.com is just waiting to be discovered. Today's conversation takes us behind the scenes of one of the most extraordinary historical collections in the world, the stories, documents, and artifacts that preserve the history of air power and the people who shaped it. I'm joined by Meghan Anderson, Manuscript Curator in the Research Division at the National Museum of the United States Air Force. As a manuscript curator, Meghan works at the intersection of history, preservation, and storytelling, caring for personal papers, diaries, letters, and first-hand accounts that help transform aircraft and missions into deeply human stories. A quick word from our sponsors. Well, Meghan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be talking to you.
So let's start with you. When did you catch this history bug? Was there like a pivotal moment in your life when you're like, this is what I'm going to do?
Absolutely. Well, not at first. I think that's always a good disclaimer to make. I went into my undergrad at Boise State University, taking history classes because that's what I had an interest in. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to teach. And my senior year, I did an internship at the Idaho State Museum, and I worked in the collections for them, processing donations and adding them into their collection. And I had this moment where an Idaho resident had donated his uniform and some other items from his World War II service. He was a private first class in the U.S. Marines, but he received a Purple Heart for injuries sustained at Iwo Jima. And as I'm going through and taking note of the details of his jacket, I look at the left shoulder and there's a hole and there's a bunch of blood. And I was shocked because I'm literally holding history in my hands. And that for me was just sort of this moment that I remember being like, this is the coolest job in the world. And I want every day to be like this. So that's sort of my little passion aha moment story. But since then, I have worked in a variety of museums. I've worked I was at the Idaho State Museum for a while, and then at their largest historic site, which is the Old Idaho Penitentiary. I've worked for the National Baseball Hall of Fame. In Georgia at Andalusia, which is the home of Southern author Flannery O'Connor. And my last position before I came here was at the International Women's Air and Space Museum.
So how does this current job and working at the manuscripts and archives here differ from your previous ones?
Oh, that's a big one. So in my previous roles, with the exception of the Baseball Hall of Fame, they were, I would say, smaller museums. And so I was working in more of I would say my positions, though I was like in collections or working with archives, they were more broad. So I ended up being sort of jack of all trades. For a while, I was my own exhibit designer. So that's always interesting. But here, the Air Force Museum, working in the research division, we are research curators. So we write content, but we also manage the archives. And that's about it. I mean, we do other things that evolve around those things, but it's not like I'm designing my own exhibits or putting on events. So
Yeah, it's not like you're like, let me get that hammer, right? And
yes.
get the scissors, see what we could figure out. So can you walk us through like a typical day or week or even a month of, manuscript curator, research division? What does one do at your job in the, again, you could do a day, week, month, or separate them or do all three.
Sure. So for me specifically, a typical week involves working with donors. So anytime somebody wants to donate archival material to the museum, we have an inbox on our webpage, and then I go in and I check it. And if anything's archival, that I'm the one who reaches out to people. So saying, hey, I saw you wanted to donate a journal or a TO. And, if they haven't sent me sample photos, I reach out for that. And then I work within our division to review and decide if it's, relevant to our collection, relevant to our mission. And then if we don't have it, or if we do have it, make that decision as to whether we should bring it in or not. And then, based on the decision a review committee makes, I then work with the donor to either let them know, sorry, no, or great, let's bring it in. So what makes my job exciting is that I am always the first person to see incoming donations. We got a really cool one last week, a collection of World War II items, have a plethora of things, but a really detailed mission log. And I get to see that.
So I guess to unpack that, a couple of follow-up questions. One, I feel like when people have these things to donate, it's like a big step for them. Sometimes it's like I found it in my attic, but sometimes it's like, my grandfather held on to this. And do you ever get that if you say, hey, honestly, we have 7 copies of this already, sorry, do you ever get like an offended person that's like, you're not going to take my stuff?
Yes, it does happen. Most people are pretty understanding, which is great. There are those that, like if we have 7 copies of, Hap Arnold's book, we don't need another one. And so I've had people get offended, mostly about things that are more memorabilia that, they're not original. I guess I should say that. We focus on primary original documents, collecting and preserving those. So, I think I get a offer for a signed copy of the Memphis Belle at least once a month. No, we have the original. Thanks. Yeah. So, it's letting people down nicely in those cases. And yeah.
Do you ever travel for this? I guess that was my second follow-up.
I haven't traveled in this position. So I'm new to this, like the Manuscript Curator title. For the past 3 years, I was working as a research curator. Mm-hmm. So I was doing more research and writing content. So that's what our division does. Our division is really sort of threefold. We have our research curators who are writing content and, doing the research for things you see on exhibits or for programs. We have the people who manage our archives, so our manuscript curators. And then Sam Lynch, who you met, he's our reference curator. And so he answers questions from the public. So those are really like our 3 main core duties. So as a research curator, I got to travel because I was going to help with exhibits and things like that. But in this current position, I haven't yet.
So the research division supports everything from exhibit development to aircraft restoration. How does working with manuscripts and archival materials directly influence the stories that are told in the museum's galleries?
I actually love that you asked this question because so much of what you see out on the floor of the museum happens behind the scenes that people don't even think about. But honestly, every exhibit you see out on the floor starts in our division. So it's like a really big thing if you think about it, because every time a new exhibit is proposed, a team is put together. So they're the exhibit team, and there's going to be a researcher from the research division. There's going to be somebody who's managing our 3D artifacts to include, and there's going to be an exhibit designer. So an exhibit designer is going to tell us, hey, you have this space to work with, 3 panels or 1 million square feet, which is crazy, but it is the size of our museum.
It's isn't it the largest one in the United States? It is, right?
In the world. Military.
Really? All right, never mind. Forget U.S. in the world.
So the exhibit designer is going to tell you your space, and then it all goes to the research curator. So our division is the one who makes an outline for the content that has to get approved. And then we do all the research and the writing. And the first step for any research curator is what's in our archive. So they have access to our database. Sometimes they'll come to the manuscript curators to say, hey, have you seen this? Or do you think we have this? But our collection is vast.
Yes. No, I was there just walking through. I literally felt like I was Indiana Jones walking through that warehouse that you see at the end of I'm like, what's in these boxes? It's like, I'm sure it's written somewhere, right? There's got to be what's in these boxes. But I mean, you can't in your lifetime get to everything in that collection.
Oh, absolutely not. In our archive, we have journals, we have technical orders, manuals, photographs, maps, and tons of books in our library. So when you're thinking about what you see in the museum in terms of exhibits, that's all going to start here with those items and what the researchers can pull from it to help tell that story.
How do you decide like what goes in, what doesn't? Is there an argument? I could see you guys sitting over coffee and like donuts and like, no, like you fight for whose item goes in.
I haven't seen any fights break out. No, there's always, I think what I learned when I first started doing exhibits was, I came in and I was new, so I didn't know the collection, what we had. So I really had to base my initial, this is what I think we should include on what I could find. But what was nice is our team here, they're like, hey, actually, we have this collection and you should check this out because I know it doesn't say it in the scope of the collection, but there's a whole file on women in the Air Force. And so, or something like that. And so that's always great that our division has a mix of, people who have been here a while, but we're also, have new people, which I still feel like I am. I've only been here 4 years now. So.
Yeah, you're not new. You've been there for 4 years.
Let's go back to how big our collection is.
Well, yes, I get it. No, I understand. But you're being very humble. I've only been here for 4 years. That's like a chunk of your life. The collection, as you said, is vast, right? An incredible range as well. Personal papers, photographs, technical documents, and even just walking through the warehouses when I was there, I mean, there's a phone booth that just is sitting there. There's like a random red phone booth and jet engines laying around. And you go to another room and then there's files and books and paintings and there's so many things. Can you think of some standout collections or hidden gems that researchers might not know about that are in your collection?
Sure. So when I went back this was a good question because it's always a good time to ask other people what they think, because what I think, isn't always of interest to what other people think. But we did agree. These are some of the coolest ones. I have do you know who Hans Scharf was?
Yes.
So I guess for audience members, Hans Scharf was U.S.A.F Germany's lead interrogator for Allied fighter pilots. Pretty fascinating guy. He wasn't like a card-carrying Nazi, but he was one of their best at getting information. And when you think about somebody who's a wartime interrogator, you assume, there's a little bit of threat and maybe a little bit of violence, but not for Scharf. He was more of he was going to kill them with kindness, so to speak. He would often bring people he was interrogating, like baked goods from his wife, and just like pull answers through casual conversation. Very interesting guy. I highly recommend, people look him up if they don't know who he is. But in our collection, we have a little album of thank yous and letters from Allied fighter pilots to Scharf. And he donated this, Scharf did, because he did end up living in the U.S. Post-war. He immigrated. He later became he did glass staining. And actually, there are some pretty big things that I feel like I can't think of them off the top of my head, but like that are famous for stained glass, and he actually did them. But this little booklet has different notes from POWs. Like this one says, "Thanks a million for making my stay more pleasant and my quiz brief." This one's my favorite. It says, "To my old friend Hans and Bill, roses are red, violets are blue. You question me, I question you. Results? Ha. You know the answers, you tell me. As for the latest secret weapons, how about the old Spud? Thank you both for a wonderful time."
Wow.
And I just think that, one, it's crazy, right? Because these airmen are POWs and they're just like, a lot of the entries list home addresses. Like, "I hope to see you again.
Wow.
Like, come visit me anytime." And that just blows my mind.
Yeah, it definitely humanizes something you would read in a textbook, you know?
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Okay, so my other cool thing that I pulled was, sorry, I was looking for it in the pile. Okay, the other item I pulled is a letter from Billy Mitchell. We all know who Billy Mitchell is, right? Um, Father of the Air Force, so to speak.
Yes.
Relentless advocate for separating the two services. So this letter Mitchell wrote to Colonel Thurman Bain, who was at the time chief of the Army Air Service Engineering Division, which was here at Wright Pat. Then it was called McCook Field, but that's a long time ago. So Mitchell writes to Bain, Bain would often appear before Congress as an advocate, not only for the engineering division, but for Mitchell and like making the Air Force an independent service. So this letter is Mitchell discussing the plan and the need for the bombing tests that he wants to perform to sink battleships to prove that, money should be given to the Air Force. And in the letter where he's asking Bain about available bombers, he says, "Which we can use, we are going to do it because we have so few on hand, and every one makes a great deal of difference, especially on account of the importance of this maneuver taking place successfully," which of course it will. So this letter he wrote in February of 1921, and they had just done the approval for the test to happen. And so this is just sort of one of those early letters, handwritten, signed by Billy Mitchell. That is a really cool item to have in our collection. But it was also space flown on Apollo 16.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I love how you finished with that. Oh, and also, FYI. So, are there any upcoming exhibits that you guys are currently, or restorations or research projects that you guys are working on?
I think our biggest things, and I feel like people who are aircraft people know this, but our restoration division is currently doing a complete restoration of the SWOOS, which is a Boeing B-17D. The SWOOS is the oldest flying fortress in existence. Only 42 were made, and this was number 39. Wow. The SWOOS is also the only U.S. military aircraft to fly combat missions on the first day of U.S. entry into World War II and remained flying throughout the war. So it was actually doing recon missions on what would have been December 8th in the Philippines, but was just post the attack on Pearl Harbor.
Like, you're talking about these like big, aircraft. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. You talk about these big aircraft, but like, how do you guys get dibs on this? Like, how do you go about getting aircraft? Because it's not like sending in, I have this diary. No, like I have this, F-117. You guys want it? Like, or do you have to fight for these things?
I don't know that it's a fight. Maybe with the older ones, that's a little different. This one I know we've had for a while. We actually got it from National Air and Space Museum in exchange for one we gave them, which was Shoo Baby.
We just exchanged some aircraft.
Yeah. With like newer models, for example, in 2023, we got an F-15C that was flown by then Captain Wing for the Air Force over Bosnia. And he is credited with 2 kills. He shot down 2 MiGs in the one mission. And so that's a pretty interesting story. So we were able to request that F-15C for when it retired. So it actually retired out of National Guard in Massachusetts. And then it did its Finney flight to the museum. And it was really cool. So this was like my first big thing in I guess it ended up coming in 2023. But so this F-15 pilot had a ton of gas left in his tank. Well, he didn't want to waste it. So he just put on his own little air show and was flying and flipping and doing all of the great things. And I was down like on the airstrip, like where he landed. It was really cool because I had to do, some public relations things for it. But then when I came back to the office, everybody was like, that was the best fly-in I've ever seen. It was like 30 minutes. It was great. So, sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent.
No, me too. I'm sorry. I'm like a cat with a laser pointer. It's just all this fascinates me. So I don't mean to derail you in any way, shape, or form. But now I already have another question, and I'm sure we can come back to what you guys are currently working on, which is what was the question. But as I walk through the museum, all these aircraft look like I could just start them up and go. Right. I mean, that's probably not the case, right? Or is that sometimes the case, or it's just never a case?
No, we don't. We do not recommend that.
Okay, cool. So like if I see like a P-51 Mustang, like that's probably not flyable, even though it looks like it could be.
Yeah, no. I think you might get a different answer from some other people. Yeah. My thing though isn't, my whole career has been about preserving things. Yeah. And I think it's also something we get a lot of, pilots who are like, oh, I flew this plane, or this is my jacket. This was my plane. Oh. And they're ready to just put it on or jump in. Yeah, don't touch. Leave off gloves on. So there is a point at which, in my opinion, we receive the aircraft or the artifact or the document, and it's now ours. So now our goal is historic preservation. So you shouldn't be, flying things. So I'll just say our restoration division, in terms of the aircraft, they do an amazing job. That's one of the things, like even things like that start in our division. So to do a restoration, they need to know what that aircraft looked like in a precise time and place. So a research curator will write what we call a CMI, which is a color markings and insignia. And it's a document where we essentially lay everything out. We want to talk about one specific aircraft in a specific time and place. We let them know what the aircraft needs, and then they make it look like it did. And it's honestly magic, I think, what they do over in our restoration division.
And just like walking through, your office when I was there, and how this all comes together, you walk, there's one room, you had carpenters that were actually building this. And then I keep on walking and I get to you guys who are basically getting the information of what should be built, in the sense, you know what I mean? It's like one big process, but it was cool to see like the brains and also the muscle that does it all, puts it all together. People don't realize that when they're staring at an exhibit, that there was a lot of parts to this to make this happen.
Oh yeah. I mean, so like I said, the exhibits start with us. So we're going to write the content, supply photos or video. Our collections division, they manage those artifacts. So telling the story through 3D items. Our exhibit designers are going to, they make it all pretty and they build it. So that's what you saw. Our shop, they build all of our exhibits. They print all of our exhibits. So all of that's done in-house. But then when you add something like an aircraft, then we bring in our restoration division. If there's an interactive element, we bring in our education division. And then depending on the size, if it's something that is having an opening, we have our events division. And so it is nice because of our size that we have all these different departments that have special skills and know how to do things a certain way. But it all wraps up and it's kind of cool, and
it stinks that you don't see, kind of like an editor on a book, you don't know who edited it. And, you're staring at something and you're appreciating what you're looking at, you're appreciative of, but, you don't realize the people. It almost would be like an author. There should be like a list somewhere that said, brought to you by,
List all the names.
Yeah, list all the names, right? And then maybe people realize like, whoa, there's a lot of names on there, like.
Maybe also a timeline. It took us this long.
Oh, yeah. Yes. That's a good point.
We're like, oh, why don't you have more new exhibits? Well, it takes a lot. And we're also all doing tons of other jobs that you see on exhibit.
Oh, my goodness. So my last question for today, if you could share one manuscript or archival item with every visitor to inspire them about the human side of aviation history, what would it be and why?
So for me, it's really hard to pick one. So I'm going to give you a very general one. But it's specific. we have an incredible collection of World War I and World War II diaries, journals, mission logs, and there isn't one that I've looked through where you can't just feel like you are in a time and place. And, you're reading it, you can feel it, like the service members, their determination and their bravery, but also their loves and their losses. Because we have tons of, where they're kind of writing entries to their moms or their girlfriends, or, POW journals where they're talking about friends lost. And I think what makes my job and what we do here at the Air Force Museum is we are not the official history of the Air Force. That's actually at AFRA. But we collect the cultural side of the Air Force. So we want those personal stories. We want those personal items because that is what's going to help us get that story out there. Because, overall operations, great, super important. That's the history we need to tell. But who are those people who are serving and performing and completing those functions? So the journals help with that immensely. So
that's awesome. Meghan, thank you so much for taking the time today. This was a great interview. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm so glad I could chat with you. This was great.